Welcome back, everyone,
Yeah, welcome back.
to another deep dive.
That's right.
I am so excited about this one because we are talking about emotional intelligence,
Ooh, yes.
or EQ,
EQ. Yes.
which I think is just so
It
fundamental
really is.
to all of our relationships, but especially, in a romantic partnership.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And you, the listeners, have brought some amazing sources.
Yes.
For this deep dive, we have therapists, researchers, and even just regular people on Reddit
I know. It's such a good mix.
sharing their experiences.
Yeah, and I think our goal today is to really, go through this material
Yeah.
and give our listeners a really clear picture of what it actually looks like when someone has emotional intelligence
Uh-huh.
or when they don't.
Right, exactly.
So that they can be aware of okay, these are the good signs.
Yeah.
This is what it looks like when someone's really got a strong handle on their emotions
Yes.
and their empathy. And then also oh, maybe these are some red flags.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Maybe this is an area where there's some room for growth.
Yeah, I love that.
So to really set the stage,
Yeah.
one of the sources that a listener sent in was from Owen Kessler.
Okay.
And it was an article about emotional intelligence in relationships.
Mm.
And he defines emotional intelligence as the ability to understand and manage
Okay.
your own emotions.
Yes.
But equally important, to empathize with the emotions of others.
Yes, and he talks about how it's really become a foundation.
Yes.
It's like a cornerstone of healthy relationships.
It's so interesting because it feels like in the past, emotional intelligence was kind of like this nice to have.
Right.
It wasn't seen as this crucial, essential skill. But now
Yeah.
it's like more and more people are understanding just how important it is.
Yeah, well, in the past, used to be all about logic and reason, right?
Right.
That was seen as
Like the most important thing.
the height of intelligence, yeah.
Yeah.
And now we're realizing that it's really the emotional landscape that we need to learn to navigate together to build intimacy and resilience.
Yes. It's like acknowledging that there's this emotional undercurrent
Yes.
that runs through all of our interactions.
I love that, the emotional undercurrent. Yeah.
Right. Because it's like you can't just logic your way
Right.
through a relationship.
Exactly.
It doesn't work.
Yeah. And another great thing is that it's a skill.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what's so exciting.
That could be developed.
Right. Like you aren't just stuck
Exactly.
with a certain level of emotional intelligence.
Right.
If you don't have a lot of it now,
Yeah.
you can learn it.
Yes. Like learning a language.
Yes.
Or a musical instrument.
Totally.
With effort and practice.
Yes.
It can be developed over time.
Now, Condi Weens, in one of the sources, broke this down even further
Okay.
into 4 key areas
I love that.
of what emotional intelligence is.
Yes.
Could you walk us through those?
Absolutely. So the first one is perceiving your own emotions. So that's being able to recognize.
Right.
Okay, what am I actually feeling?
Name it to tame it.
Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
like that.
Exactly. And then the second one is understanding
Okay.
your emotion. So it's going deeper
Right.
and saying, okay, what is this emotion telling me?
Right. Like, what's the message?
Exactly. What's the message behind it?
Yeah.
What information is this giving me?
Yeah.
And the third one is regulating your own emotions.
Okay.
So this is about managing those reactions.
Right. So not just exploding
Exactly.
every time you get upset.
Exactly. Having healthy coping skills.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the fourth one is recognizing and influencing
Ooh, interesting.
the emotions of those around you.
Okay.
So that's where empathy comes in and social skills come in.
Right. So it's not just about me and my emotions. It's
right.
okay, I'm also in tune with
Yes.
what's going on for other people
Yeah,
emotionally.
exactly.
Now, Owen Kessler, in one of the sources, he talks about what happens in a relationship
Mm-hmm.
when emotional intelligence is missing.
Okay.
And he lays out a lot of ways
Yes.
that low EQ can negatively impact couples.
Yeah.
But one of the things that really stood out to me was poor communication.
Yes.
If you and your partner can't understand each other's emotional state,
Right.
or even your own emotional state,
Yeah.
it's really hard to express your needs clearly and understand.
Yeah, it's like trying to navigate a complex situation
Yes.
without a shared language.
It really is.
Yeah.
So true. And then another thing that he mentioned was difficulty in resolving conflicts,
Yes.
which makes sense because if you can't empathize with where your partner is coming from,
Yeah.
during a disagreement,
Yeah.
it's really hard to find common ground or compromise.
Exactly. Like each person is stuck in their own little world,
Yes.
their own emotional silo.
Their own silo.
Yeah.
It's so true. And then the next thing that he mentions, lack of empathy, which kind of goes hand in hand with what we were just saying.
It does.
But, if you can't really understand or share in your partner's feelings, it's really hard for them to feel emotionally supported by you.
And that's so important
It
to
is.
feel seen and understood and validated
Yes.
on that emotional level.
So important. And when that's missing,
Yeah.
it can lead to feeling really alone,
Yes, even when you're physically together.
even when you're right next to each other.
Yeah.
It's wild.
It is.
Now, he also mentioned the inability to handle emotional stress,
Yes.
which I think is really interesting because,
Yeah.
we don't always think about
Right.
the way that people handle stress.
Right.
But if someone has low EQ, they might overreact
Mm-hmm.
to small things, or they might withdraw.
Totally.
They become emotionally unavailable.
Right.
And neither of those are good for the relationship.
No, definitely not. It makes you feel like you're walking on eggshells or...
Or abandoned.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And then reduced emotional intimacy,
Yeah.
which is a big one. Right. Because, emotional intimacy thrives on vulnerability,
Yes.
being open and sharing your feelings.
Yes.
But if one or both partners have low EQ, that vulnerability can feel really risky.
Yeah, it feels dangerous.
Yeah.
So you can't really get to that deep emotional closeness.
Right. It's like the emotional safety net isn't there.
Exactly.
So then
Yeah.
it makes it really hard to be vulnerable
Right.
and to go to that deep place with each other.
Exactly. And then he talks about inadequate problem-solving skills,
Yes.
which we don't always think about, but...
Right. Because it's like you think problem solving
Right.
is just about logic.
Exactly. But it's not.
But it's so not.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, what are the emotions behind this?
Yes.
What are the feelings behind this?
Yes.
Right. And if you're not taking those into consideration,
Right.
you might come up with a solution that, logistically
Yeah.
makes sense.
Right.
But it doesn't actually address the root
Exactly.
of the problem.
Yeah. And then it can lead to unhealthy behaviors.
Yes.
Like passive aggressiveness.
Passive aggressiveness.
Yeah. Or even manipulation.
Right. So instead of dealing with the emotions
Right.
directly, they try to control things
Right.
in other ways.
Exactly.
And it's so frustrating
Yes.
to be on the receiving end of that.
It is. And then difficulty adapting to change,
Yes.
which, life is all about change.
All about change.
And relationships are constantly evolving.
Yes.
So someone with low EQ might struggle to adapt to those shifts.
Right. So if there are changes
Yeah.
within the relationship itself,
Right.
like you're going through a new stage of life together,
Uh-huh.
or even external changes like a career shift,
Yes.
or something with your family,
Uh-huh.
that can bring up a lot of emotions.
Yes.
And if someone doesn't have that emotional flexibility
Right.
to navigate it, it can really lead to a lot of friction and conflict.
Exactly. And it can impact other areas of their life, too.
Yes.
Like their friendships and their family ties.
Right, because it's like, okay, our romantic relationships
Yeah.
don't exist in a vacuum.
Right.
They're part of a larger
Um,
web of relationships.
yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so if someone's having trouble
Yeah.
with those other relationships, it can create stress
Uh-huh.
and tension,
Right.
and it can even lead to isolation,
Yeah, for sure.
which then impacts the romantic relationship.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of the overview of what can happen
Yeah.
when EQ is missing. But now let's get into some of the specific signs.
Okay, yes. Let's get into those.
The more tangible signs that we might see
Uh-huh.
if our partner has low emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And Owen Kessler and Isabel Chase give us a whole bunch of these.
They do.
So one of the first ones is difficulty expressing emotions.
Yeah. So they just can't articulate.
It's like they don't even have the words.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to speak a language that they don't know.
It's like you can see that something's going on,
Uh-huh.
but they can't tell you
Yeah.
what it is.
Right.
And then the flip side of that is the inability to understand other people's emotions.
Yes. The lack of empathy,
Yes.
where they just seem indifferent to how you're feeling.
Right. Like it just doesn't register
Yeah.
that you're having an emotional experience.
Right. And then poor listening skills often go along with that.
Yeah.
Like they might hear the words you're saying, but they're missing the tone.
Nuance.
Yeah.
The body
The
language.
emotional subtext.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The subtext. And so it leaves you feeling unheard.
Yeah. Unseen, unheard, like you don't matter.
Yeah.
And then there's overreacting
Oh, the overreacting.
to emotional situations.
Yes, where they just have this like really extreme response.
Right. To something that you just like,
That seems really small.
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And then avoiding emotional topics,
Yeah.
which we see all the time.
All of the time.
It's like the minute things start to get a little bit deep,
Right.
it's like shut down,
Yeah.
changes the subject,
Yep.
and then lack of self-reflection,
Yeah. So important.
which I think is huge
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
if someone's not willing to look inward
Right.
at their own behavior, their own pattern,
Yeah. Their own role in
their role in things, then
Yeah.
it's going to be really difficult to create any lasting change.
Exactly. And they might have trouble maintaining relationships, not just romantic.
Right? Because the same patterns will show up
Exactly.
over and over again.
Yes.
And then inconsistent emotional responses.
Yeah. You never know what you're going to get.
Right? It's like one day they're this way,
Uh-huh.
the next day they're totally different,
Yeah. Very unpredictable.
and then blaming others for emotional issues.
Yeah. So they don't take responsibility.
Right. It's always someone else's fault
Exactly.
that they're feeling this way.
Right.
It's never them.
Never. Yeah.
And this can lead to a lack of emotional support.
Yeah.
Because if they can't understand their own emotions,
Right.
it's really hard for them to be there for you emotionally.
Exactly. They can't even support themselves emotionally.
Yeah.
So how can they support you?
It's true.
And then there's disregarding others' feelings.
Yes, which goes hand in hand with the lack of empathy.
Yeah.
But it's like they're actively minimizing
Uh-huh.
or dismissing
Yeah.
your feelings.
Yeah. It makes you feel like you're overreacting
Yeah.
or you're too sensitive.
Yes. And it's like, no, my feelings are valid.
Yes, exactly.
I'm allowed to have these feelings.
Yes.
Then difficulty adapting to change, which we've talked about.
Uh-huh.
Overemphasis on logic,
Yeah.
which can be really frustrating
Right.
because it's like, hello, emotions matter.
Exactly.
And then impulsive behavior,
Right.
where they just kind of act without thinking.
Yeah.
Especially in those emotionally charged moments.
Uh-huh.
And then frequent misunderstandings.
Yes.
Which is bound to happen when there's low emotional awareness.
Right. Because they're just not picking up on those cues.
They're not picking up on the cues.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Isabel Chase adds a few more points
Oh, okay.
to this list.
Yeah.
One of them is difficulty handling criticism.
Okay.
So they might get defensive
Uh-huh.
or angry
Right.
or just shut down completely
Yeah.
when they receive feedback
Exactly.
and then neglecting emotional needs.
Yeah. So they might dismiss your needs
Right.
as being overly sensitive or irrational.
Like what you were saying before, that feeling of
Yeah.
my needs don't matter.
Exactly. It's like your feelings are wrong.
Right. Or that they're not important.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then inflexibility in emotional situations.
Right.
So they kind of have this one-size-fits-all
Uh-huh.
approach to dealing with emotions.
Yeah. And they just can't adapt.
They can't adapt.
Yeah.
And then difficulty acknowledging others' emotions.
Which we've talked about a little bit, but it's so important
It really is.
that it bears repeating.
It's like that real dismissal or
Uh-huh.
invalidation
Yeah.
of your emotional experience.
Exactly.
Now, one of the sources that a listener sent in, it's from Erin Leonard,
Okay.
and she talks about 3 signs of low EQ in new partners.
Okay. So early on.
Yeah, so you're just getting to know someone,
Uh-huh.
and it can be really easy to miss these.
Yes.
So her first point
Yeah.
is the difference between empathy and support,
Okay.
which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. Explain that.
So she gives this example of a couple, Lisa and Ron.
Okay.
And Lisa is telling Ron about this conflict she had with a coworker.
Uh-huh.
And Ron's immediately like, oh, that coworker's terrible. You're totally right. I'm on your side.
Right.
It's very supportive.
Yeah. Supportive. Yeah.
But then later, Lisa and Ron get into an argument. And Ron's not able to see her side at all.
Right.
He's not empathetic to her perspective.
Yeah. Because it's easy to be supportive
Right.
when you're both aligned against someone else.
Totally.
But true empathy shows up when you can understand someone's perspective.
Even when you disagree with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And her second point is the difference between care and control.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Especially early on in a relationship.
Right. When you're still figuring things out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she gives the example of Chris and Helen,
Okay.
who are a new couple. And Helen's going on a business trip.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris is like, oh, I'm so worried about you traveling alone,
Okay.
which on the surface
Right.
seems caring.
It does.
Right.
Yeah.
But then Helen mentions that she's going to have drinks with some colleagues after work.
Uh-huh.
And Chris freaks out.
Okay.
He's like, no, you can't do that. It's too dangerous. You have to stay in your hotel room. And so it becomes clear that it's not actually about caring for her safety.
Yeah.
It's about controlling her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the third one is the difference between meaningful compliments and physical flattery.
Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah. So it's about the difference between someone who sees you
Yes.
for who you are.
Versus just your appearance.
Exactly.
Right. So a meaningful compliment would be something like, I love how thoughtful you are.
Yeah.
Or you're such a kind person.
Yeah. Versus you look hot.
Right.
Yeah, because it's great to get compliments on your appearance.
For sure.
But if that's all you're getting,
Right.
it might be a sign that they're not really interested in who you are.
On a deeper level.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's so easy to get swept up
Yes.
in those early stages of a relationship.
It is.
To not see those red flags.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about low EQ.
Yeah.
Let's talk about high EQ.
Okay, I like this.
What are the good signs?
Yes. Let's get positive.
So Condi Weens,
Yes.
Hannah Pisani, Isabel Chase, and Kashi Wrights.
Right.
They all talk about some of these.
Okay.
And one of the first ones that Condi Weens mentions is the ability to engage
Okay.
in healthy conflict.
Which is so important.
Right, because it's like conflict is going to happen.
It is. It's inevitable.
It's inevitable in any relationship.
Yes.
But it's about approaching those disagreements
Yes.
in a way that is respectful
Yeah.
and constructive.
Exactly. It's not about avoiding conflict.
Right.
Because that doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It's about learning to do it well.
So not yelling, not name calling,
Right.
not shutting down.
Exactly.
It's about, okay, we have a disagreement.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it
Yeah.
like adults.
And find a solution that works for both of us.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And then she talks about the ability to see things from others' perspectives.
Yes. The empathy.
The empathy.
So important. So important. And she highlights things like active listening, asking questions
Yeah.
to really understand where the other person is coming from.
Right, and not interrupting.
Not interrupting. Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
That is so huge.
It is.
Because it's like if you're constantly interrupting
Right.
or trying to like steer the conversation back to yourself,
Uh-huh.
you're not really listening.
No, and you're not making the other person feel heard.
Exactly. And it's about making the other person feel
Yeah.
heard and understood,
Yes.
even if you don't agree with them.
Right.
And then she talks about the ability to manage your own emotions in a healthy and productive way.
Yeah, which is all about that emotional regulation.
Right. So, being able to tolerate those negative emotions
Yes.
without just like falling apart,
Right.
right? Or having these huge reactions.
Yeah, finding healthy ways to cope with those emotions.
And this leads to more enduring relationships, right?
It does.
Good.
Because it's like if you're constantly having these big emotional swings,
Right.
it's really hard to feel stable and secure.
Exactly. It creates chaos.
Yes. It creates chaos
It's instability.
in the relationship.
Yeah.
And then her next point is they let you be you.
Yeah, I love that one.
It's so good.
It is.
Because it's about that feeling of being completely accepted
Yes.
for who you are.
Exactly.
Not who they want you to be.
Right.
They're not trying to change you. They're
Yeah.
not trying to like mold you.
Yeah. They appreciate your differences.
Yes. They celebrate them even.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yes.
And they respect your boundaries.
Yeah, and they give you space to be yourself.
Space to be yourself.
Yeah,
So important.
it is.
Now, Hannah Pisani
Yes.
adds this quality of grit
Okay.
to the list.
Yeah.
And she defines grit as resilience,
Mm-hmm.
perseverance,
Okay.
and passion.
In pursuit of long-term goals.
Yes. So in a relationship, this looks like,
Yep.
being willing to work through challenges together,
Yes.
not giving up easily.
Yeah, not running away when things get hard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And maintaining that commitment
Uh-huh.
to the relationship, even when things are tough.
Exactly. And managing those negative emotions
Yes.
in a healthy way during those times.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, we're going to hit bumps in the road.
Right.
Life is not always easy,
It's not.
but it's about, okay, how do we weather those storms together?
Exactly.
And do we still have that optimism,
Yeah, that belief in the relationship.
that belief,
Yeah.
that shared vision for the future?
Exactly.
Now, she also talks about self-awareness,
Uh-huh.
which we touched on earlier as a sign of low EQ.
Yeah.
But what does healthy self-awareness look like?
So it's about being able to understand
Okay.
your own moods, your emotions,
Right.
and your thoughts about those emotions.
Right. Is being able to articulate
Yeah,
how you're feeling.
exactly.
Yeah.
And being able to bounce back from those negative moods.
So not staying stuck
Right.
in a negative space for too long.
Exactly.
And then having a healthy sense of self-esteem.
Yeah, that's key.
Yeah. And she differentiates that from arrogance,
Yes, so important.
which can sometimes be confused
It can.
with confidence.
Yeah, because arrogance is often a cover-up for insecurity.
It's like overcompensating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then she talks about having a solid network of friends
Okay.
is a good sign.
So why is that important?
Because it shows that they have those interpersonal skills,
Right.
the empathy and the social awareness to build and maintain
A healthy relationship.
healthy, lasting relationships.
Right. So it's not just about the romantic relationship.
Right.
It's like, okay, can they also have healthy friendships?
Exactly.
Healthy family relationships?
Yeah, because if their friendships are full of drama,
Right.
that might be a sign that they have some emotional difficulties.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then noticing when you're having a bad day.
Oh, yeah, that attentiveness.
You have
That's
to-
so important.
That emotional attunement.